Well, Grant, that's the question everybody's asking right now, isn't it? At times like this, everybody gets upset stomach every time they look at their account statements in the stock market. I think the reality is every investor's got to get their allocation right for them. And you never want to be 100% out of the market, and you normally don't want to be 100% all in the market either. You need an allocation somewhere between 20 and 80%, depending on your age and your level of risk. And we want everything to be black and white and certain, and the stock market is gray a lot of the time. So you have to have some exposure, but you don't want to be so heavy in the market that you can't sleep at night or you worry about it all the time. You need enough to where you stay in, but not so much that you want to get out.
All right, so you just said the key there, and I remember back in my old days, I worked for AIG as a floor trader on the commodities exchange, and this is going a way back. But I read a book called Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, and Rebecca, one of the lines I always remember was, don't invest so much that you can't sleep at night. Lower down your holdings to the point that you can actually rest easy. Correct or not, Rebecca Walzer?
It's absolutely correct, Grant. And that's my firm's philosophy. We actually built what we call a fiscal house, and the market, the stock and bond market, is the roof of the house. So it's a part of our package. We love to be in it, but we love to be in it to the extent we can control the uncontrollable, right? And if the roof blew off of the house, we still have a wall and a foundation. We still have a bed inside the house we can sleep in. Might get a little bit wet, a little bit of a storm, but yeah, that's exactly right. And it's exactly what George just said. You need to control your volatility to the extent that you can sleep at night. I mean, you said it, he said it, and it's exactly what investors need to understand, because the market will go through periods. No one saw necessarily the coronavirus coming out of nowhere and dropping our stock market, over 25+% in 6 weeks. But that's exactly what happened. And, if you're not prepared for these volatile kinds of situations, if you're so into it that you cannot sleep at night because that's your position, then you need to relook at how you've diversified your actual portfolio.
All right, George, so I'm doing my best to bring some millennials in to start watching this program. Our audience tends to skew a little bit older here on Newsmax, and we're working on changing that. But my question is, you've got your 401ks, you've got your retirement accounts. Say you're over 65, you're retired, and you've just watched half of it disappear, come back a little bit. What do you do when you're at that age and it's so frightening to really not have any control whatsoever of this?
Let's say somebody is 65 and they're retired and they're not working anymore, and they were overly aggressive and they were more than 70% in the stock market, maybe at 100% in the stock market, and they have been having trouble sleeping at night. Well, right now, what you just did this week is what they should be doing. They should be trimming and cutting back, because they got a 33.8% bounce off the bottom of 2,200 on the S&P only last month. I mean, it was late March when this happened a month ago. So they have a gift to be able to cull back their allocation where they can stay in the market. And whether they ought to be 30% in the market with their retirement savings or 60%, that's an individual decision for each person. But they've been given a gift and they ought to take it.
Man, I'll tell you what, I felt it was the same way. I felt like it was a second chance. Rebecca, here's another amazing story. I had a rental home that went on the market April 1st. Of all time, my tenants, who are my very good friends, said they're moving out. I had said, hey, I think I'm going to sell it. Take your time. And they tell me we're moving out April 1st. Do you know my house sold in one day here in Texas? One day. I think that's a sign that maybe we survived some of this real estate-wise, Rebecca.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, real estate, if you look at the longevity of real estate over the history of America, it is one of the most stalwart asset classes, certainly an inflation hedge for sure. But, one thing I will say is a lot of people look at real estate as a hedge, right, as an outside, unaffected market participant. And while that's great news about your house selling in one day, what I will say is the Great Recession and now coronavirus has, uniquely impacted real estate as we're not used to. Obviously, the Great Recession was real estate centric. It started with subprime lending crisis in the real estate housing market, the housing boom. And now this obviously has laid off so many people, over 30 million people now laid off temporarily. A lot of those people, we hope, as soon as the economy gets regoing. But those people aren't able to necessarily make their rent or their mortgage payments. So it's also still affecting the real estate market. So it has been a really bit of an indicator that, don't think of real estate as a complete hedge against what's going on in the market, because we've seen now the last two corrections, major corrections, that real estate has been actually involved in it.
And certainly location. It really differs depending on what part of the state you are in. Rebecca Walzer, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some time with us. And George C., it is always good to see you, my friend. I haven't seen you in a little bit, but it's great to have you on the program. You got it. All right, folks. Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor and counsel to the president, stopped by Newsmax. Never one to hold any opinion back. Why would he, right? Rudy Giuliani up next. Stick with me.